Welcome to this overview of student rights within special education. We hope you're well and that whatever your circumstances look like today, that you take time to do something in kindness for just yourself. Whether you're a parent or a professional or both, you may be caring for others who need a lot of support. Practicing self-care is imperative now more than ever. My name is Jerry Clark, and I'm a Parent Resource Coordinator with Parent Training and Information, PTI, at Washington Pave. Pave stands for Partnerships for Action, Voices for Empowerment. Pave is a nonprofit agency that has supported families in Washington State since 1979. Our home office is in Tacoma, and our services are available for free to families statewide. Our resource coordinators provide support and training related to special education. Our services include language interpretation upon request. Our PTI is funded through a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. Please note that the contents of this presentation do not necessarily represent the policy of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. Pave is not a legal service agency and cannot provide advocacy, advice, or legal representation. Our goal is to empower families by providing information and access to resources. I'll provide some additional information about how to access support from Pave at the end of this presentation. Pave is a part of multiple national, state, and local networks of families of children and youth with special healthcare needs and disabilities. Our children and families need multiple services and supports to live an optimal life. Unfortunately, Black families with special healthcare needs and disabilities experience unacceptable inequities in the access to and provision of care and services, public education, and they are disproportionately criminalized. In solidarity with those who are speaking out about the urgent need to address these disparities, we say, we see you, we hear you, we stand with you. You can read Pave's full statement of solidarity and commitment to action at wapave.org. This presentation is an overview of the protections for students with disabilities. Included is training to understand key terms. The primary federal laws that protect students are the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. I will go over key aspects of those laws and talk about them within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. A downloadable PDF of the slide presentation is available through our website, and many of the slides include resource links for further information. No federal or state agency has waived any of the protections for students with disabilities. Many services are being provided differently during the pandemic, but student rights have not been waived. The timelines for annual review of the Individualized Education Program, IEP, are not changed, and the responsibilities to seek out, evaluate, and serve students with disabilities are maintained. Some families face barriers related to language access. Under state and federal law, all parents have the right to information about their child's education in a language they can understand, and students have a right to accessible learning materials. The Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, provides guidance about language access rights available in multiple languages. Here are examples of documents that parents can expect to receive in their native languages: meeting invitations, evaluation results, the document that describes a student's IEP, and the prior written notice, or PWN, which schools are required to provide after a meeting to summarize the discussion and highlight any agreements, disagreements, or upcoming changes to the IEP. Education rights are like a pyramid, and children who qualify at the top of the pyramid have all of these protections. At the bottom of the pyramid is ESSA, which stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. ESSA guarantees access to a free public education to ensure that every child has the opportunity to achieve. In the middle is the Rehabilitation Act, which includes Section 504. This law provides civil rights protections for individuals with identified disabilities throughout the lifespan. Section 504 defines disability broadly as an impairment that significantly impacts a major life activity. That might include anything from breathing or walking to socializing or learning. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, also protects individuals from disability discrimination by requiring accommodations that support equity. A person in a wheelchair, for example, has the civil right to access a library, a school, or a museum with ramps and accessible entrances. Accommodating hidden disabilities can seem more complicated, but the right to an equitable opportunity is still protected. At the top of the pyramid is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, which provides a plan for appropriate special education services. Students who are evaluated and found eligible will have an individualized education program, an IEP. A student with an IEP has all the protections of the IDEA, Section 504, the ADA, and ESSA, the whole pyramid. An agency called Understood provides a helpful chart that describes differences between an IEP and a Section 504 plan for school. This slide shows a portion of that chart. A Section 504 plan has accommodations and modifications to break down barriers caused by disability in a general education setting. A student with an IEP has rights to that help and a program that includes specifically designed school-based services and goal setting to monitor progress in areas of specially designed instruction. Keep in mind that special education is a service, not a place. Here's a quote from Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The law states that no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall, solely by reason of her or his disability, be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. With these protections, students with disabilities have the right to equitable education. Let's take a moment to consider the word equity. It doesn't just mean equal. Equal would mean students all get the same help. You can see from this picture that getting the same help doesn't create the same opportunity. The boy in the wheelchair cannot see the game, even though he has a platform just like the other children. Accommodations and supports make access equitable when they are designed to meet a unique set of needs. In the picture marked equity, all 3 children have a way to see the game. Hidden disabilities are sometimes harder to accommodate, but it might help to consider this ramp as a metaphor for any support need. What is the ramp, for example, that enables a child with a learning disability or a mental health challenge to access education in the classroom? More information about equity rights is available from the Office for Civil Rights, housed within the U.S. Department of Education. Keep in mind that discrimination against persons with disabilities is prohibited by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. Note that Title II of the ADA prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability by all public entities, regardless of whether they receive federal funds. Section 504 and ADA protections are for the lifespan. The right to appropriate special education services is rooted in a 1975 law called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. That law was amended and renamed the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in 1990. The concept of a free, appropriate public education, known as FAPE, became the overarching principle of the IDEA. Virtually every conversation about the entitlement of a student in special education is about what truly makes the IEP appropriate to meet a specific student's needs, regardless of the nature or the severity of the disability condition. The rest of this presentation will focus on special education rights. There are 6 general themes woven throughout the IDEA. The first is the concept of FAPE, the overarching principle that a student with a qualifying disability is entitled to an educational program that is specifically designed to meet unique needs. A free, appropriate public education. A student also is entitled to an appropriate and non-discriminatory evaluation, an IEP reasonably calculated to help the student make progress in light of the circumstances, and education in the least restrictive environment to the maximum extent appropriate. General education classrooms are the least restrictive settings, and schools are required to demonstrate why a student is unable to access FAPE in the regular classroom before recommending a more restrictive placement, such as a structured learning classroom. Under the IDEA's 5th principle, parents and students have the right to participate in educational decision-making, and schools are responsible to encourage and accommodate that participation. The 6th principle is that families have the right to dispute decisions through complaint processes outlined in the IDEA's procedural safeguards. When the IDEA was passed by the United States Congress in 1990, lawmakers used the acronym FAPE to describe what a special education student is entitled to receive: an education that is uniquely designed and appropriate in light of the unique circumstances of disability. Virtually every conversation about a student's special education program is about FAPE. A good question to consider is this: what truly makes the individualized education program appropriate to meet a specific student's needs? A student has the right to FAPE regardless of the nature or severity of a disability, and the local school district is responsible to provide FAPE. Administration of the IDEA has been impacted by various legal rulings. An example is a 2017 Supreme Court ruling referred to as Andrew F., which is the name of a child whose parents took the school district to court. In that case, the court ruled that trivial progress toward goals does not meet the standard of FAPE. The ruling included firm language to reinforce progress toward grade level standards and parent participation in the IEP process. The court's wording included the key phrases highlighted in purple on this slide. To meet the standard of FAPE, which is referred to by the court as a substantive obligation, a school must provide an IEP reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. Summarizing all student rights, here is a question that any IEP team can consider. What makes learning accessible in an equitable way to enable a student to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances? Those circumstances might include the pandemic, family resources, the condition of learning from home, illness, medical fragility, or something else that is impacting access to learning. Here are a few considerations for IEP teams as they define FAPE for a student receiving special education services. Those services might include specially designed instruction, related services such as speech or occupational therapy, strategies for social emotional learning or behavior, and placement or location for service delivery. What is reasonably acceptable for the student? Are there liabilities to consider? For example, if a student or family member is medically fragile and cases of COVID-19 might be on the rise in the student's community. Does a doctor need to be part of the decision process about whether a student attends school in person? Even with good teamwork and great intentions, there will be times of disagreement. In moments where collaboration feels impossible, it can help to notice if family and school are like mountains with a huge space between opposing peaks. In those moments, the team can come back to common ground. The heart in the middle of the two mountains is where the student can access FAPE, free, appropriate public education, which is everyone's goal. For example, a parent can remind the team that the student is skilled at something or is motivated by a certain approach and look for ways to build on that skill to grow in other areas of learning. This might be a helpful diagram to review before a school and family meeting. A student's entitlement to FAPE includes the right to a comprehensive, non-discriminatory evaluation process. The next few slides are about the IDEA's second primary principle, evaluation. The IDEA includes a mandate called Child Find that requires school districts to seek out, evaluate, and potentially serve infants, toddlers, or school-age students with a known or suspected disability if there is reasonable suspicion that a disability condition may significantly impact access to learning. The right to evaluation is not waived during COVID-19, and therefore ineligibility is not determined because of lack of time or data. Schools are responsible to evaluate students and to serve them if they are eligible for special education services. The Child Find mandate includes language that passing from grade to grade does not automatically disqualify a student from services. A child's entire education is considered, and disabilities can impact access to learning in a variety of ways that may be academic or could be based in social, emotional, or behavioral needs. Pave provides an overview of the evaluation process and a sample letter that family caregivers might use to write a request for an educational evaluation. If you type sample letter evaluation into the search bar on our website, you'll find that content. Our website address is wapave.org. If an evaluation indicates that a student has a qualifying disability, the impairment will meet criteria in one of 14 categories. These categories are broad and capture a wide variety of conditions that can cause barriers to learning. For example, other health impairment is a catch-all for many disabilities related to medical diagnoses, such as ADHD. Note that emotional disturbance is a category of disability. A student with a mental health condition that significantly impacts access to education may qualify for an IEP, regardless of grades or academic ability. Developmental delay is a qualifying category for children from birth through age 9. This information is specific to Washington State. Our presentation today focuses on a section of the IDEA called Part B. Before age 3, a child might qualify for services through another part of the IDEA called Part C. Part C programs are administered in a family-centered way with evaluations and programming that are somewhat different from those for school-aged children. Pave has materials on our website about early learning. The Washington State Association of School Psychologists has issued a guidance document to support evaluations being done during COVID-19. This quote from that document highlights the emphasis on collaboration and clear communication. Parent and student input and engagement are more important than ever. Deadlines are unchanged due to COVID. In Washington, a school has 25 school days to respond to a request for a special education evaluation. After family caregivers give their consent, the school has 35 school days to complete the evaluation unless the family agrees to a longer timeline. The third principle of the IDEA is the Individualized Education Program, IEP. The way special education services are designed and delivered by the IEP is how the school district provides FAPE to an eligible student. Keep in mind that an IEP is a fluid program and not just a document. A brick and mortar IEP reflects how the student receives special education services in order to access FAPE when schools are fully operational. Some IEPs will be fully implemented through what the state calls Continuous Learning 2.0. For some programs, an IEP amendment shows how services are being alternatively delivered. Parents can agree to amendments without a full meeting of the IEP team, or they can request a meeting to talk through options. In Washington, a continuous learning plan might document what's happening. The continuous learning plan was developed during the spring of 2020 as a contingency planning tool to support but not replace the IEP. The plan provided a way to document differences between the IEP as written and what was suspended or provided differently. That data may support an IEP team in making decisions about recovery or compensatory services, which we will discuss in a bit. On its website, OSPI provides model forms. This page from the IEP model form shows how to track information about how services are delivered. During COVID, IEP teams may want to have a service matrix that shows what services look like if school is fully operational and a contingency plan for what services look like during distance learning. This can be tracked with IEP amendments or a prior written notice. Family caregivers can request a meeting if the school's proposed plan needs further review or discussion. Ancillary services, sometimes called related services, include occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, nursing, and other school-based services that a student with disabilities needs in order to access FAPE. The IEP lists related services, including details about how and when they are delivered. Some providers may offer those services through telehealth, and this is a topic for IEP teams to discuss. Related services may include parent training. For example, the school might provide training about how to collect data and/or guidance for behavior management while a child is learning from home. Related services may continue with support from the local school district, even if a parent withdraws the child from public school to enroll in private or homeschool. The resources listed on this slide have additional information for parents interested in homeschool alternatives. OSPI provides a booklet of special education guidance for schools and families in the 2020-21 school year. A link to that booklet is included on this slide, which also shows a picture of the guidebook's cover. A section of the booklet describes options for services to support students who may fall behind on their IEP goals because of the circumstances of the pandemic. The next few slides provide information about recovery services and compensatory services. The booklet shown on the previous slide is summarized in a 4-page document provided by OSPI. The link on this slide connects directly to the summary at k12.wa.us. A link is also searchable on OSPI's page for special education guidance for COVID-19. Recovery services are a new option developed to address unique circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Recovery services are likely provided outside of regular school hours, but may be concurrent to meet the needs of a specific student. OSPI has stressed that recovery services should not interfere with access to the general education curriculum or other new and ongoing learning opportunities. According to OSPI, the extent of a student's recovery services, if needed, must be an individualized determination made by the IEP team, considering individual student needs in the context of instructional opportunities that were provided to all students during the school facility closures. Recovery services are not the same as compensatory services, which are educational opportunities provided outside of regular school to make up for IEP services that were not provided even though the student was available to receive them. Generally, a student may qualify for compensatory services if it is determined that the standard of a free appropriate public education, FAPE, was not fully met in the provision of special education. an IEP team can decide to include compensatory services in a student's plan, and or the state might require compensatory services upon resolution of a complaint process. Most of the suggestions on this slide are part of an article on Pave's website called IEP on Pause: How to Support Continuous Learning. By preparing specific questions for the IEP team to consider, a family caregiver can direct the team's conversation toward topics that are most important to support the student's ongoing progress and access to learning. Another way for a family caregiver to prepare for an IEP meeting is to carefully review the present levels of performance, which are described in the first section of an IEP document. The present levels are generated initially through the evaluation process and can be amended by the IEP team to provide a comprehensive look at what the student is good at, how learning looks when things are going well, and where the student struggles or needs more support. The present levels are used to determine where specially designed instruction is needed and how goals will track progress. An agency called Rights Law provides information about special education law and legal cases to support families in their advocacy. A new resource listed and linked on this slide provides specific information about how family caregivers can use the IEP present levels to support progress during the COVID-19 pandemic. If the present levels are well written and understood, it can help the IEP team develop SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Goals are the outcome measures for specially designed instruction, and parents can ask how teachers are teaching specific skills that are being tracked by the goals. Parents who review goals before a meeting can arrive with changes or questions in mind. Understanding the goals and how to measure progress is an important collaboration while children are learning in various locations. Goals measure whether instruction is effective. This is a screenshot of a section of OSPI's model form for an IEP. You can see that the form provides help for the team to monitor progress. A family caregiver can request a specific communication plan for participating in goal tracking. During continuous learning, the parent may also want training in how to collect data and make progress notes. Remember that parent training can be an IEP-related service. This is a screenshot from the section of the IEP model form for developing accommodations and modifications. An accommodation is a change to the way the student can access the learning. For example, a video might offer the instruction instead of a written assignment. A modification is an adjustment to the student's required work. For example, a student might only do every other math problem or take a shortened exam. Note that the IEP team is responsible to determine what an individual student needs in order to access FAPE and make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. Not every option is cut and paste, and there is a place to record uniquely designed accommodations and modifications. This slide is a screenshot of the first section of Washington State's Continuous Learning Plan, which was developed in spring 2020. A copy is available through OSPI's website and also linked through Pave's article called IEP on Pause. If the IEP team used a continuous learning plan in spring and summer 2020, it may provide data for conversations about recovery or compensatory services. The state did not require use of this form and is no longer recommending its development. Instead, the state encourages IEP teams to figure out the best way to implement a student's IEP through distance, in-person, or a hybrid service delivery. Distance learning has generated new vocabulary. Two terms that are important to understand are synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Synchronous instruction is delivered through an online platform, by phone, at school, or in another way that a teacher can directly instruct a student or a group of students in real time. Asynchronous instruction might be a lesson recorded by a teacher or could be a packet of curricula for independent or parent-supported learning without the school staff directly present in real time. The lessons are designed and overseen by school staff. IEP teams can consider how to support both synchronous and asynchronous learning through specially designed instruction, accommodations, and modifications individualized to meet a student's needs. Families can help track what is provided and whether the learning is inclusive, accessible, and appropriately designed to support progress appropriate for a student with a special education program. In August 2020, the state issued guidance about tracking attendance during the ongoing pandemic. In the bulletin referenced here, OSPI stated that daily attendance data is a leading indicator that provides frequent and actionable data to inform educators and schools of barriers students are facing. It can signal a need for additional support or flag where the student is experiencing challenges within our system. This signal is even more critical during the COVID-19 pandemic, where responding to weekly contact or less frequent data point is not sufficiently responsive to address inequities and barriers for students furthest from educational justice and resources. Districts are instructed to mark any absence from remote learning as a non-truancy remote learning absence that is neither excused nor unexcused until October 4th of 2020. Starting October 5th, districts will begin to mark remote absences as excused or unexcused. This is a screenshot of Pave's website, wapave.org. If you type continuous learning into the search bar, you will find a link to the article I've referenced several times called IEP on Pause, How to Support Continuous Learning. Much of the content we've just reviewed is included in that article. The fourth principle of the IDEA is the concept of least restrictive environment, LRE. A student is entitled to FAPE in the least restrictive environment. Schools are responsible to demonstrate what accommodations, modifications, and other supports have been attempted in the general education environment before recommending placement in a more restrictive setting, such as a structured learning or a special education classroom. The National Association of State Directors of Special Education provides a brief about LRE during COVID and distance learning. The handout includes general language about LRE in any environment, including this statement. The removal from the general education environment only occurs if the nature or severity of the disability is such that education in the general education classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Family members can ask what general education looks like for students in the environment of continuous learning and how a special education student is supported to access what all students are receiving. The NASDSE brief includes this chart, which provides an example of how LRE might be considered for a student in distance learning versus traditional school, or a hybrid model of some distance and some in-person education. As always, a mix of special education services and general education access can be designed to address a student's specific strengths and needs. A phrase worth considering is this: presume competence. If the IEP team approaches its work from the attitude that the student is competent and capable, how does that presumption help frame a conversation about how to help a student build on strengths and overcome barriers? How might this question influence conversations about a student's placement and access to the least restrictive environment? The IDEA's fifth principle is parent and student participation, which is a required aspect for FAPE delivery. The next set of slides provides information and resources to support families in their work with schools. The IDEA and state regulations about IEP team membership make it clear that parents or legal guardians are equal partners with school staff in making decisions about their students' education. When the student turns 18, educational decision-making is given to the student. The school does its best to bring parents and students into the meetings, and there are specific rules about how the school provides written records and meeting notifications. To research Washington regulations related to team participation, you can search for WAC, which stands for Washington Administrative Code, WAC 392-172A, 03100. Pave provides tools to help families get ready for a meeting with the school. Pictured here is the top half of the sample handout specifically designed for students. Asking the student a few open-ended questions about how things are going and what might help can provide training in self-advocacy and generate ideas for problem solving. The student may want to attend or lead all or part of the IEP meeting. If not, the student's comments can be included on a handout built by the parent, or a family member can record the student's statements on a video or an audio to share. Schools encourage students to develop self-determination and want to reward those who step forward to ask for what they need. Pictured here is the bottom of the student-directed sample handout. This list can be a handy during the meeting to track agenda items. This document also becomes part of the official meeting record, and families can submit the handout to school staff ahead of time to make sure everyone has time to read it. A downloadable PDF of this form is available on our website within the article called "Attention Students, Lead Your Own IEP Meetings and Take Charge of Your Future." A parent version of the form is available through an article called "Get Ready for Your Meeting with a Handout for the Team." If you type the word handout into the search bar on our website, you will find what you're looking for. The state of Washington requires students to proactively help students get ready for their lives beyond public school. A high school and beyond plan, HSBP for short, is required to begin by 8th grade for all Washington students. The plan includes career forecasting, community engagement, and much more. The state requires that the high school and beyond plan supports transition programming for a student with an IEP, and a transition plan is the required IEP element by the school year in which a student turns 16. Additionally, a young person in Washington might get pre-employment or employment services from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, DVR. A DVR counselor might participate in IEP work groups. Other tools to support a young person are person-centered planning and school to work, which is available in many areas for students eligible for support from the Developmental Disabilities Administration, DDA for short. Families can ask DDA and school case managers for information about school to work programs. More information about vocational rehabilitation is included in an article on Pave's website called "Ready for Work: Vocational Rehabilitation Provides Guidance and Tools." A resource for a young person planning for life after high school is called youthhood.org. The site is designed for and by youth and therefore can support learning in self-advocacy. It's maintained by the National Center on Secondary Education and Transition. Here's another resource for young people planning their futures. A Learning Enrichment Center at the University of Oklahoma offers a practical tool to support IEP teams in developing a transition program. Find more information about how to access the Transition Assessment and Goal Generator, which is called TAG, by looking for tag.ou.edu. A family caregiver also could ask school staff to research TAG in support of the IEP team. Family advocacy might include issues related to bullying. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act requires schools to respond to bullying in order to protect the right to FAPE for a student with a disability. StopBullying.gov provides resources designed for families and young people. The Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, is Washington's education agency charged with overseeing and supporting the state's 295 public school districts and 7 state tribal education compact schools. As communities respond to the COVID-19 outbreak, OSPI offers a page committed to COVID-19 related resources and guidance for schools and families. Families have rights related to the process of special education and how to resolve disagreements with the school. These rights are described in the procedural safeguards, the 6th and final primary principle of the IDEA. The school provides parents with a written copy of their procedural safeguards at referral and yearly thereafter. A copy is also available online from OSPI, and the document is available in multiple languages. Parents may receive procedural safeguards from the school in their chosen language anytime they request them. They also may receive a copy if they file a complaint. Procedural safeguards are offered when a school removes a student for more than 10 days in a school year as part of a disciplinary action. When parents and schools disagree, these rights describe the actions that a parent can take informally or formally. Pave provides a webinar called Parents as Partners that describes some of the procedural safeguards and offers communication strategies when parents and schools disagree. A parent complaint might be about the delivery of special education services, or it might relate to a question about civil rights or discrimination, areas that are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act and/or Section 504. OSPI provides a list of civil rights coordinators at schools throughout the state who can be contacted with questions. In addition, OSPI provides information about discrimination dispute resolution options in various languages. The State Office of Equity and Civil Rights is available for questions as well. Civil rights complaints also can be filed at the national level through the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, which provides informational materials for free online. One document available for download from the Department of Education website is a fact sheet about student civil rights while schools are closed. This was released March 16, 2020, and formed the basis for schools to deliver continuous learning without any waivers from federal protections for students with disabilities. The League of Education Voters and Schools Out Washington maintain a spreadsheet of reopening plans listed alphabetically by district. The document is available through educationvoters.org and on Google Drive documents linked to this slide. Districts are responsible to post their plans on their own websites and to regularly update these sites as plans change with the circumstances of the pandemic throughout the 2020-21 school year. Washington's Department of Health provides guidance to support school districts in their decision process. This flow chart describes considerations for reopening school buildings safely and can be found at doh.wa.gov. The PDF of this presentation provides a live link to this and many other documents referenced throughout the slideshow. These are agencies that can help. Pave and the 3 O's, OSPI, the Office for Civil Rights, and the Governor's Office of the Educational Ombuds, which provides online and one-to-one support for families who struggle to collaborate with schools. Here are other places parents can reach out for solidarity and guidance. Open Doors for Multicultural Families is based in King County. Open Doors provides culturally and linguistically relevant information, services, and programming to diverse families of persons with developmental and intellectual disabilities within the Seattle area. The statewide Arc of Washington and 10 local chapters provide services and programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities of all ages. Some districts have special education parent advisory councils or parent-teacher associations already in place, or parents can request help to start one. Families can ask their school teams whom they partner with for additional assistance. Pave's Parent Training and Information Center, PTI, is a federally funded program. We provide one-on-one support, training, and information that is free for Washington State parents, youth, and professionals who want to better understand how to navigate special education process. To scan through articles and resources, click Learning in School on the homepage of our website, wapave.org. The blue arrow is pointing to that tab. You can search for articles by typing a keyword into the search bar. The red arrow is pointing to the search bar. After typing your word or words, press the search button. For direct assistance, click Get Help from the toolbar in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage. The purple arrow is pointing to the Get Help tab. Here's a list of our contact information. You can find us online at wapave.org. Another way to get help is by calling our toll-free number, 800-572-7368. Another place for resources and information is our Facebook page. You can follow us at Parent Training and Information of Washington. Pave has added new links on our website for COVID-19. On our homepage, you can find the large blue button labeled View Links. Clicking on that button will open a list of options. If you download a PDF of this PowerPoint, these resource links will take you to a variety of materials Pave has created to support families during the pandemic. You can also look them up with keywords using the search feature on our website. Here's a hint. If you look up the article Fall 2020, Ready or Not, you will find this resource list at the end of the article. These are a few resources providing technical assistance while much of children's learning is happening with the support of technology. Since Pave began back in the 1970s, we've made it a priority to help families access original source documents about their rights and responsibilities. Here are the formal names of state and federal guidance documents related to special education process. This slide is a reminder that Pave is not a legal service agency and cannot provide advocacy, advice, or legal representation. Our goal is to empower families by providing information and access to resources. Thank you for your participation today and for being an advocate for someone with special educational needs. Remember to practice self-care when you are assisting someone with a high need for support.